Hello, boys and girls and non-binary and others. This is, I have something to tell you. But before we go there, let's just get the elephant out of the room. Yes, I currently have mermaid hair. It was a spontaneous decision that happened at the salon. It was not planned. Anyway, the thing is, I haven't told this all that many people, although by now the secret is kind of out. But I have been actually learning Korean for a year now. Yeah, it's been a year. A little more than a year ago. It's been a year in, I figure, March. It's now April, early April, so I'm like a month late. But I mean, usually there's not really any specific start dates to these things anyway. So yeah, about a year. I'm so awkward in front of the camera. So the reason I'm making this video is because I'm part of a language learning community who learns languages the way that I do. I will do a little bit of explaining. But it's mainly, we kind of keep each other accountable and stuff. And so I thought I'd make a progress update documentation thing. So yeah, here I am. This is that thing. So why Korean? I mean, it's not that surprising. I kind of have a boring reason. The short version is I'm really into K-pop and K-drama, which is kind of like, one of your standard answers. But I don't know. I mean, everyone has their specific thing. I am also just a huge language nerd. I love linguistics and languages and just, I love it. I speak 3 of them fluently. So English, as you can tell, which is not my native language. I speak German, Austrian German, which is my native language, and I speak French also. The specific story is a bit long, so I'm gonna leave that maybe for another video. If you want more details, I will tell you all about my language journey. Just let me know, I will make that video. So the reason for Korean is that I was kind of, as I said, I'm really into languages, massive nerd. And I was flirting with learning another language anyway, where I was flirting with Italian, really. Italian is extremely similar to French, so I figured, why not? I also really like it. But then one of my best friends kind of got really into K-pop and K-drama again. That's the short story. There's always a longer story, guys. It's always a longer story. Anyway, she was like, you have to watch this drama. I watched it and of course I just kind of head first fell into that black hole. So yeah, that's the version. The slightly longer version is that this friend of mine and I actually went to school together, and around our mid-teens, anime and manga got really popular in Austria. And we got really into anime and manga. And through that, we really got into J-drama, obviously. And through that, we got really into J-pop. And through that, we got really into K-pop and K-drama. And so I was an original Shawl. Shiny for the win. I used to be really into Big Bang as well, Dongbang Shingi, etc. So yeah, it kind of dates me a little bit. But all of Shiny are younger than I am, just so you know. Yeah, and then, life happened. I went to study and work and everything, and so didn't keep up with the K-pop and K-drama scene, and now kind of fell back into it. And so since I was looking for another language to learn anyway, and I'm in general really interested in that area, and actually like during that time where we were really into manga and anime, etc., we attempted to learn Japanese. My friend succeeded, I failed. Japanese is like my nemesis language. I have tried to start learning Japanese so many times over the last 15 years. I'm not even lying. It's ridiculous. I have like basic survival Japanese. I could probably kind of be like, sorry, where's the toilet? Can I order this? Can you help me? Directions, that sort of thing. I understand more than I can speak, obviously. My accent is probably horrible. But yeah, Japanese was my nemesis forever. Yeah, so since I was already kind of looking for another language to learn, and I was really seeing myself getting obsessed with K-drama, etc., I was like, perfect. because I don't really do traditional language learning. So being really into K-drama is the perfect premise for learning Korean, as you will see in a moment. This is a really chaotic video, I'm sorry. I did make notes, so I'm looking down all the time, but like I kind of have a tendency to jump around all over the place. I'm sorry if this is very confusing. I may have to record it again. So how am I learning Korean? The method. I don't really use traditional language learning methods. This section is kind of, if you're a Refold person watching this, please just move on to the next section because it's probably gonna be things that you already know. But I'm kind of partly making this video for my friends as well, so I'm going to explain a little bit. I don't learn languages the traditional way. By this I mean I'm autodidactic, first of all, so I learn it by myself. I do not go to a classroom. I don't do exercises. I don't study grammar like very specifically, so I don't go through a curriculum very strictly or anything like that. I do have grammar books, but the way I study is very particular, so I don't do any exercises or anything like that, like written exercises. So there's this guy called Stephen Krashen, which everybody in my specific language community knows about. He is a linguist, and he actually put forward, I hope I'm not saying this wrong now, but it's the language acquisition via immersion theory or method. And this has been studied. So it's called the language acquisition. What is the name of the theory actually? Language acquisition theory? I don't know. Basically what he says, actually let me try and find that video where Krashen explains it himself really well. It's like really old, from kind of I think the 70s or something, but he still says it, explains it really, really well. I'm gonna link that in the blub below so you can watch it if you're interested. Basically what he puts forward is that the way we learn languages traditionally in school, etc., is extremely ineffective and complete bullshit. You can learn language that way, sort of, or half-ish, but the thing that is the most important, and that always, even when somebody traditionally learns language, that always plays the biggest role in actually you internalizing the language, and he uses the word acquisition here for a very specific reason, is immersion. And immersion, don't think of immersion as, going into the country and being surrounded by native speakers and all of that stuff, because it's absolutely possible to live in a country and never learn this country's language, as has been proven many, many times by families moving somewhere else and never managing to acquire the language. So he makes a very specific difference between learning and acquisition. Learning is the conscious studying of something, trying to memorize, like reading grammar rules and trying to understand it, etc. Learning does not guarantee that you can use it afterwards. Acquisition, however, happens completely subconsciously. It's basically the process by which children learn their first language. They acquire it. They don't study grammar until they go into school, but by then they're already fluent in their language. They have already acquired it. All they do is listen. They get exposed to the language. And more specifically, you need to get exposed to the language in a comprehensible way and in a compelling way. This is important because if it's not compelling, you're going to zone out and it's going to go in there and out there. So this method basically relies very, very heavily on consuming as much content in your target language as possible, always trying to find stuff that is roughly around your level or a little bit above if possible. It's very, very difficult in the beginning, especially, right, to find comprehensible input that is also interesting. But to basically try, because the way we learn language is by understanding messages. I mean, there's so many examples out there of kids or people who learn languages who said, yeah, I learned it watching Friends. Like, if I want to take the example of BTS's leader, RM, he was like, he just watched Friends, first in Korean dub, then in English with Korean subtitles, then in English with English subtitles, and then without subtitles. Like, that's how he learned English. I am the best example because although I did study English in school, like, the learning traditional stuff, I was shit. I was so shit, in fact, that my parents sent me on one of these 2 weeks language camps or something where kids get sent to try and get better at the language that they suck at. That didn't help at all because I was speaking French the entire time I was there because there were only French people there. I spoke only French the entire time I was there. Anyway, I was really bad at English at school. But the thing is, I had a really huge interest for pop music. All the popular music is there's very little popular music in German. There's some, but not a lot, not a hell of a lot. And most of it is in English. I love, and music is a huge part of my life, and I wanted to understand it. I wanted to watch movies in the original language, and most importantly, I I wanted to read Harry Potter when it came out. I didn't want to have to wait for the next thing to be translated. So the thing is, when Harry Potter first came out in German in Austria, I was 11. I was 11 years old when the first Harry Potter came out. I don't know if you know this, but Harry Potter is, I mean, you should probably do. Harry Potter is 11 years old in the first book. So I had this immediate connection. I love fantasy in general. So I was like, I'm a classic millennial. I'm a huge Potterhead. Okay. I read the first 4 books in German, and then I started getting sick of having to wait until the next one came out in German. I wanted to read them when they came out in English. So I decided to start reading the books in English. And I started with the first book, and I worked my way through, not understanding everything, but like being familiar enough with the material already that I could understand what was going on because I'd read them so many times in German or listened to the audiobooks, etc. So I did that. Simultaneously, I started watching all of the shows in English with English subtitles, if possible, or, you know, the movies, etc., and consume more English content. And so without realizing, I basically applied immersion techniques, so to speak. I acquired English via immersion. I just, at some point, I switched my phone to English. I only searched things on the internet in English. All my YouTube is in English. I mean, now my life is in English, basically, but that's how I learned English. So I learned English properly via immersion without realizing what that was. Like that there was an existing theory that, you know, explained this. And I know this, I have a larger English vocabulary than some, not all, but quite a few native speakers that I have met. They have told me this to my face. My too late absolute favorite bragging rights story is when I was studying in England. I actually went to study in Manchester in England as well. I did not plan to tell you my English learning story, but here we are, I guess. So this was funny actually, because when I arrived there, at the time I already thought I was fluent in English, but when I arrived in Manchester, I don't know if you know, but Manchester is a huge university city. There's like 3 big UK universities there, so it's full of students from all over the UK, and the UK has a very broad range of accents. I arrived in Manchester and I felt like a freaking idiot because I did not understand a word anybody was saying. Because the dialects are so strong. Anyway, in my second year, I lived with 2 British students in like a shared house, you know, as you do. And I think I mispronounced something, and I started complaining about it because I'm a perfectionist and I get annoyed by stuff like that. And my housemate, I will never forget this ever in my entire life. My housemate looked me straight in the face like this. Jill, you use words I've never even heard of. Shut the fuck up. It was so funny. It's the best thing ever. I felt so good. I will never forget that. That was beautiful. Sorry. Anyway, you know where that comes from? Reading, like a lot. And not, you know, nonfiction. Fiction. I just read a shit ton of fiction. I have a way larger vocabulary in English than I do in my native language. Why? Because I've been probably like almost exclusively reading in English since the age of, I want to say 16, 17 is probably when I made the transition and almost exclusively read in English. I have a much harder time writing. I mean, my entire, you know, student and professional life also happened in the English speaking realm. So I have a really hard time writing German business emails. I actually sometimes have to write it in English first and then translate into my native language. Okay, this is This is what immersion can do for you guys. You can forget or like fall behind in your native language if you immerse enough in another language. So yeah, that's what immersion is for those of you who don't know. So one of the other things is that, to kind of sum it up, how I learn is there is a virtually zero emphasis on grammar and output, meaning speaking and writing in the early stages. So when you try to acquire a language via immersion, you are in it for the long run. You kind of have to understand that you will not be speaking from day one. I mean, you can if you want to, but it can even be counterproductive. It depends on the person, right? You have to adjust and adapt the method to your own, put your own special sauce on it, basically. But you're in it for the long run. So basically, you know, to kind of, I guess, condense it as far as I see it, is you are trying to learn to understand the language first before you start outputting, before you start speaking and writing. And that takes a while. So you're trying to get to a level where you already comfortably understand most of the things that you read and hear before you really start or put in any significant practice in your speaking and your writing, which can take a while. So I've been studying Korean for a year now, and I'm not really at the output stage yet. Yeah, I mean, I could talk for another hour about this stuff, but this is not this video. So the thing is, in my personal opinion, there is no cookie cutter, one size fits all way of doing this. Like for Korean specifically, I did actually study grammar. So the whole thing about the language through acquisition, language learning through acquisition, the whole point of it is that you don't need to study grammar if you don't want to. You can skip the grammar books. The recommendation, I suppose, is that you look up grammar points sometimes if you like really don't get what's going on. You can look it up and you're just basically just use grammar to aid your comprehension instead of studying it and trying to apply the rule and all of that stuff. No, you will learn this stuff by getting exposed to it over and over and over again. In fact, there are grammar rules in English. If you're a native English speaker, there are grammar rules in English that you will not know. Or even if you are an English learner on a high level like me, there's certain grammar rules that never even get taught. For example, wait, I'm gonna have to look this up specifically. I'm looking for my phone, but it's right there. I'm recording on it. Wait, yeah. So there's a perfect example of why it is pretty much useless to study grammar specifically and try to apply the rules and like learn grammar and try and think about the grammar rule while you speak. It's useless. It's useless because we learn certain things without realizing that we're learning them, which is the whole acquiring process, right? The best example is actually even in English, which is beautiful. Did you know that when you have multiple adjectives in a sentence, that they are in a very specific order? And if you switch the order of the adjectives around, it sounds weird. It's like, let me give you a simple example. You say the big red dog. You would never say the red big dog, would you? Sounds weird, right? You know why? Because there is a specific grammar rule that we obey that nobody knows we're obeying. The rule is that multiple adjectives are always ranked in a specific way. Opinion, size, age, shape, color, origin, material, purpose. Unlike many laws of grammar or syntax, this one is virtually inviolable, even in informal speech. You simply can't say, my Greek fat big wedding, or leather walking brown boots. And yet, until last week, I had no idea that such a rule existed. I'm quoting from a random article I found. But yeah, when I found out about this, because, you know, I'm a linguistics nerd, I was like, what? I love this stuff so much. So yeah, perfect example. We all obey this rule without realizing we're obeying it. And we're obeying it just through having had enough input in the language to know this instinctively. And this is the entire thing this thing is based on. This is how we acquire our native language, and this is how we should acquire any language, by just getting exposed to the language enough to start understanding these rules instinctively. And we can do that because our brain is a pattern recognition machine. All of this is backed up by science. Stephen Krashen specifically says that, grammar is absolutely useless. You should never look at grammar. Well, he doesn't say you should never look at grammar, but grammar study specifically, intense grammar study doesn't have a lot of use. I personally, I'm not a linguist, but I personally tend to disagree. I think it has its place. I believe that it really depends on the language that you're concentrating on. So if I were to learn Italian, I already speak French, I would never look at a grammar book ever. Not even at all. I don't need it. I would literally just start reading and watching stuff in Italian, start listening to podcasts. In fact, I have the first Harry Potter in Italian, and I listened to that and I understood 80%, I want to say. I already have a very high comprehension in Italian without even trying, because I speak French. So it really depends on the language that you're going for. Korean, however, is a language that is so far removed from all of the languages I already speak that, to me, I had to look at the grammar, and I actually enjoyed it, weirdly enough. I did look at the grammar in the beginning. I managed to go through Talk to Me in Korean, level 7. I'm at level 7 now, and now I've completely stopped looking at it because I know enough of the basic stuff that I can continue kind of without looking at it anymore. But for the very beginning, because Korean sentence structure is completely different to English, German, or French, to any of the Romance or Germanic languages. So you need to kind of just even the most basic of basic Korean sentence structures is completely different to anything in a language that I already knew. I did start by looking at the basic grammar, but I never did any of the exercises, and this is the whole point. The only reason I was studying grammar was in order to aid my comprehension. Sometimes I would read things several times when I would come across a sentence. I'm like, okay, this structure is familiar, but I don't know what it is. I look it up again. And then, I put it away again. I just need to understand. I use it in order to understand what I'm reading, what I'm listening to, what I'm watching, and not to drill grammar rules or anything like that. I know that will come automatically. So there's a little bit of you have to use it in a way that makes sense. I completely went off of my notes on tangent galore. But let's continue. Let's see where this goes. This is already 35 minutes long. Holy shit. All right, my next section here says, how's it going and where am I at now?